Hello friends, welcome to Vyara Learnings. In our discussion on Indian polity, we had started with two topics and also we covered these two topics, that is preamble and fundamental rights. Now let's start with the third topic, that is directive principles of state policy. In short, it is called as DPSP. So, in this topic, directive principles of state policy, we need to understand all these five concepts. That is, firstly, we must know the meaning of directive principles of state policy. Let's understand the background of directive principles of state policy, and we must understand the significance, characteristics of DPSP, and at last we shall study the list of directive principles of state policy and also the amendments made to this directive principles of state policy. Firstly, the meaning of directive principles of state policy. So, if we split this word, directive principles, so these are nothing, directives, that is, it is the instructions given by whom? Given by constitution to the state for framing policies and laws. So this directive principles are nothing but the directives or the guidelines or the instructions given by constitution to the state for framing the policies and laws. That is, state while formulating any laws or policies, the state has to keep in mind these directive principles or the instructions. So this is the meaning of DPSP. So next, why this directives has to be kept in mind by state is to ensure to achieve this welfare state, to achieve this socialism or the distributive justice. So in preamble we studied about justice. In justice, preamble mentions about social justice, economic justice, and political justice. This social and economic justice together is called as distributive justice. To achieve this distributive justice welfare state, directive principles are very essential. Hence, state has to keep in mind these directive principles of state policy while formulating the policies and laws. That is why these instructions are given to the state, and we shall understand the meaning of welfare state later on. Now, in the background, see, before independence, there were various British laws, and one law is Government of India Act of 1935. One such law is Government of India Act of 1935. Under this act, there was something called as instruments of instructions, and this DPSP is similar to this instrument of instructions. It is also saying, the name itself is saying, that is instructions. This is the instrument of instructions given to the state, and DPSP is also similar to this instrument of instructions. Here DPSP is given in constitution, in a law book called as constitution, whereas this instrument of instructions before independence, it was given under Government of India Act of 1935. And the original idea of having this DPSP or the instrument of instructions was taken from the Ireland or the Irish constitution. The source is Irish constitution. Now, where is this DPSP placed in constitution? See, if we consider constitution as law book, this law book called constitution, it is divided into various parts. Okay, it's divided into some 25 parts. This DPSP in constitution is placed under part 4 of our constitution. While studying fundamental rights, we saw that fundamental rights is placed under part 3 of our constitution, and this part 3 of our constitution covers articles from 12 to 35. Similarly, this DPSP is placed in part 4 of our constitution, and it covers the articles 36 to 51. Simply, the meaning of articles is nothing but, see, if constitution is a law book divided into various parts, articles is nothing but, articles are the rule or like rule numbers or the law numbers. Okay, so that is what is the meaning of articles. So articles 36 to 51 under part 4 of the constitution is nothing but directive principles of state policy. So this articles 36 to 51, what it tells is, article 36, it defines state. Already in fundamental rights, while we studied about article 12, we studied the meaning of state with respect to the subject polity. That is, state covers the central government, it covers the state government, and also other various organizations or the bodies that are funded, managed by government. So all this comes under state. State doesn't mean the state states like Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka. But here in polity, the meaning of state is completely different. And in detail, we had studied it in fundamental rights, that is in Article 12. Similarly, Article 36 also, it defines the state. It defines the meaning of state. For to understand the meaning of state in detail, refer to our previous video lectures. Next we have is Article 37. Article 37 gives the characteristics of DPSP. It tells whether the DPSP is justiciable, amendable. So all these characteristics of DPSP has been listed under Article 37 of our Constitution. Next is Article 38 to 51 gives the list of DPSP. Now let's study the characteristics of DPSP and then we shall study the list, that is the various directives under Article 38 to 51. Firstly we have is Article 37, that is the characteristics of DPSP. So the first characteristic is DPSP is non-justiciable in nature. So while studying fundamental rights, we studied that fundamental rights are justiciable. That is, if the fundamental rights are violated, we can directly go to the courts for the implementation of the fundamental rights. So fundamental rights are called as justiciable, but DPSP is non-justiciable in nature. That is, you can't go to the courts if the DPSP is not implemented. So these are called as non-justiciable in nature. If the main aim of the DPSP is to achieve this welfare state, if there is so much importance that is given to the DPSP, then why these are made as non-justiciable? Because see, at that time when Constitution came into force in 1950s, India did not have that financial stability to make this DPSP, to implement this DPSP fully. Okay, so if the DPSP is violated, if people are approaching courts, then it would be very difficult, right? That is the reason, considering the economic status of our country, we had made the DPSP as non-justiciable, and this is continuing even after so many years of Constitution coming into force. That is, still DPSP is non-justiciable considering the economic status of our country, because economic status was not so suitable to make this directive principles of state policy justiciable. Hence DPSP is even now non-justiciable in nature. Next characteristics of DPSP is directive principles of state policy are fundamental in the governance of the country. That is, these are very basic tool that has to be used by states in making the policies and laws. And also these DPSP is like a measuring tool. It is like a yardstick to measure the performance of the government. The success of the government is measured by seeing whether the DPSPs are implemented or not. So this is the fundamental in the governance of the country. The next characteristics of DPSP is amendable in nature. That is, you can make changes to DPSP with the evolving times. The needs also gets changed, right? The society also evolves. There will be a lot of new technologies, like if you consider now AI, so it was all not there earlier. So with the evolving times, there will be a lot of changing needs of a society. So in order to accommodate all these needs, Constitution is being made as flexible. That is, Constitution can be amended. Similarly, DPSP is amendable in nature. That is, you can make changes to DPSP in order to accommodate the changing needs of the society. So DPSP is called as amendable. That is, you can make changes to DPSP. The next characteristics of DPSP is called as positive obligations on the state. That is, it simply means it tells what the state has to do while formulating the policies and laws. Fundamental rights, if you consider, these were called as negative obligations on state. Why fundamental rights are called as negative obligations? Because it tells the state not to do it. It tells the state not to discriminate, not to discriminate people with respect to public employment or with reference to accessing the public places. So it tells the state not to do all these kind of things which violates the fundamental rights of people, right? So these fundamental rights were negative obligations on the state, whereas the DPSP is positive obligations on the state. That is, it tells the state to do certain things. Hence this is called as positive obligations on the state. Next is DPSP is community oriented, whereas fundamental rights, it is more of individual rights. Because see, fundamental rights is giving rights for a person, for individuals. If it is giving right to equality, if it is giving right to freedom of religion, it is giving it to all the people, or the individuals. Whereas DPSP is more of community, it is giving rights to the communities like SC, ST, women, children. It is for old age people, for sick people. So this is why DPSP is called as community oriented. So to summarize the characteristics of DPSP, firstly we studied that DPSP is non-justiciable in nature, and DPSP is fundamental in formulating the policies and laws, and DPSP is amendable in nature. That is, you can make changes to DPSP, and DPSP are like the positive obligations on the state. That is, it tells the state what it has to do while formulating the laws and policies. Hence, these are positive obligations on the state, and DPSP or community rights. That is, it is giving rights for the communities rather than the individuals. For the people, it is giving for the entire community. These are the characteristics of DPSP. Then what is the significance or the importance of DPSP? This DPSP, it reflects some of the human rights that is given in Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Already we studied fundamental rights also. It is covering all the rights that are listed in the under the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. So even this DPSP is also covering some of the human rights that are given under this Universal Declaration on Human Rights. So that is the importance that DPSP is having, and it is very fundamental in the governance of the country. So it is like guidelines for the state in its governance. And also this DPSP and fundamental rights, together it correlates to the aims and aspirations of the constitution, and these aims and aspirations of constitution we had studied in preamble. So this has been listed in preamble. That is, in preamble we studied the aims and aspirations of the constitution as justice, liberty, equality. So all this together can be achieved by implementing the directive principles and fundamental rights together. So this together, it correlates to all the aims and aspirations of the constitution that is seen in preamble of a constitution. So this is about the significance of DPSP. And also DPSP is not having any legal sanction. That is, this DPSP is not having any law backing of the law. That is, the DPSP is just the measuring tool or the yardstick to measure the performance of the government, whether the government has brought the welfare schemes or not, whether the government has just brought with the populist schemes, that is just to iron the oats, whether the government is focusing to get the oats, or whether it is really making any schemes for the welfare of the society or not. All these things can be measured by using DPSP, by referring to DPSP. Hence this DPSP is having the political sanction. That is, DPSP is like a measuring tool or the yardstick to measure the performance of the government, but this DPSP is not having any legal sanction. To revise the topics that we had studied today, that is, we understood the meaning of DPSP, that is the directives to the state while making the policies. That is the meaning of DPSP. And in background we studied that DPSP was sourced from the Government of India Act of 1935, where DPSP was called as Instrument of Instructions, and then the idea of having this was taken from Ireland or the Irish Constitution. And in characteristics we had listed the various characteristics of DPSP, which says that directive principles are non-justiciable or amendable, etc. And we understood the significance of DPSP. Next topic is we must study the list of DPSP. We shall study it in our later video lectures. For more videos, keep watching Vyara IAS. Thank you.